hospital hallways smelled of antiseptic and quiet despair. Machines beeped in rhythm with fading hope, and in the corner room where light struggled to enter, Ethan Carter sat motionless beside a bed. His fingers trembled as they clutched the edge of the blanket, eyes hollow from sleepless nights. Just 3 weeks ago, he was the kind of man everyone admired, confident, successful, full of life. But in the cruel blink of fate, his world had crumbled like sand slipping through open hands. The accident had taken everything, his career, his dreams, and nearly his will to live. And as the world slowly walked away from him, one person stayed. Before we dive deeper into Ethan's journey, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and love that endures even through life's darkest storms, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel. Your support helps us spread more heartwarming stories like this one. Ethan had once been the face of promise, a talented architect in New York City who built not just skyscrapers but dreams. He'd spent years working his way up, balancing long nights, missed birthdays, and endless deadlines just to see his name engraved on a skyline. When he finally achieved that, it felt like victory. But life, as it often does, had other plans. One rainy evening, after presenting his latest project, he had been driving home with his fiancée, Lillian. They were laughing, dreaming of the house they'd buy, the life they'd build. Then, in an instant, everything went black. A truck skidded on the wet road, crashing into them. When Ethan woke up days later, Lillian was gone. The doctors told him he was lucky to survive, but luck felt like a cruel joke when every breath carried the weight of grief. His body was broken, his right leg shattered beyond repair, his face scarred, but it was his heart that took the deepest wound. He couldn't walk for months. His company replaced him. Friends who once filled his apartment with laughter stopped calling. Pity visits faded into polite silence. Even family, unsure how to handle his pain, drifted away. The man who had once been surrounded by people now found himself utterly alone, except for one person. Her name was Haley, a quiet nurse who always stayed a few minutes longer than her shift required. She never treated him like a patient or a burden. She didn't offer empty sympathy. Instead, she asked about his work, his dreams, his late fiancée. She listened, truly listened, when he spoke of the pain he tried so hard to hide. Ethan noticed her presence long before he admitted it to himself. She had this calm, unshakable kindness that made even the worst days bearable. She wasn't trying to fix him, she was simply there. But kindness, he had learned, could be hard to accept when your heart was still bleeding. There were nights when Ethan pushed her away, told her not to waste her time. Everyone leaves eventually, he had muttered once, bitterly. But Haley didn't. She stayed through his anger, his silence, his stubborn refusal to heal. When he fell during physical therapy and refused to get up, she sat beside him on the cold floor until he found the strength to try again. When he stared at his scarred reflection with disgust, she told him that strength was more beautiful than perfection. Slowly, day by day, her presence began to thaw the frozen parts of him. She brought him books, not about recovery, but about dreams, architecture, art, and cities he once wanted to see. Sometimes she'd wheel him outside to the hospital garden just so he could feel the sun again. Those quiet moments where she spoke about little things, her love for painting, her fear of thunderstorms, became his lifeline. Months passed. Ethan was finally discharged, though his limp remained. He moved into a small apartment, modest but filled with light. The silence that once crushed him now felt less suffocating. Haley still visited occasionally, bringing homemade soup or helping him with errands. At first, he thought it was pity. But one evening, as they sat by the window watching the rain, she said softly, "You don't need to be fixed, Ethan. You just need to live again." Her words lingered long after she left that night. For the first time in years, he picked up his sketchbook. The pencil felt strange in his hand, but familiar too. His lines were shaky, uncertain, just like him. But as the sketches grew, so did something within him, hope. He began designing again, First small things, then a concept for a community center dedicated to rehabilitation and healing. A place for people like him who'd lost parts of their lives but still had something to give. When he showed the design to Haley, she stared at it with tears in her eyes. "You're building hope, Ethan," she whispered. That night, for the first time since Lillian's death, he smiled. Not the polite, practiced kind, but a real one. As the seasons changed, so did his heart. The grief didn't vanish, but it softened. Haley became a quiet constant in his life, not replacing what was lost, but adding something new. Their friendship deepened into something he didn't dare name at first, but it was there, in the way he looked for her in a crowd, in how her laughter made his apartment feel like home, in how her belief in him made him want to be better. One winter evening on the anniversary of the accident, Ethan returned to the spot where his life had shattered. Snow fell gently, muffling the city's noise. He stood there with flowers in his hand, one for Lillian, one for the man he used to be. Haley stood beside him, silent but present, her hand brushing his just enough to remind him that he wasn't alone. "She would have wanted you to live," Haley said softly. He nodded, tears slipping down his cheeks, and in that moment, he understood. Love doesn't always end. Sometimes it changes form and finds its way back through someone else. Months later, his rehabilitation center opened. It wasn't grand, but it was beautiful in its simplicity. Open spaces, sunlight streaming through tall glass windows, and gardens designed for peace and recovery. People came, broken, uncertain like he once was, and slowly began to heal. Ethan stood there on opening day, looking at what his pain had created. Haley was there too, smiling, proud. He realized then that she hadn't just stayed when everyone else left. She had walked with him through every shadow, believing in the light ahead even when he couldn't see it. They never had a dramatic confession or a fairy tale moment. Their love grew quietly, through shared coffee cups, unspoken support, and laughter that returned after long silence. It wasn't about replacing the past, it was about learning that love could exist again in a different way, deeper and more real. Years later, when people asked Ethan about his success, he never spoke of awards or buildings. He always said, "It started with someone who stayed when everyone else walked away." If this story has touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who might need hope today, and subscribe for more emotional, real-life kindness stories that remind us of the beauty in second chances. And before you go, I'd love to know, what does true love mean to you? Tell me in the comments below, because sometimes the most powerful kind of love isn't loud or perfect. It's the one that stays when the world walks away.